Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I wanted to conclude a series that I've been doing looking at the 40 challenges of the Expedition League, and what I want to do today is look at the 12 that I feel are the hardest. So if your goal is to go for 36 or 40 challenges, you're either going to need to do 8 or 12 of these challenges respectively. The first video in the series covers the 15 that I feel are easiest, and the second video covers the 13 that I feel are the intermediate difficulty ones. If you want some clarification on how to do any of those, there'll be a tiny bit of discussion there, but mostly check in the links down below and you'll see the rest of the series. What you should expect to need to do if your goal is to go for 36 challenges is to run enough maps to do about 15 Cirrus cycles. So you want to fight Cirrus Awakener of Worlds about 15 times. You'll need to do most of the Uncharted realms, and you'll probably need to get to about level 96 on your character. And what I generally suggest players do is actually do all of that first. There's a bunch of stuff that requires you to go out of your way in these challenges, requiring you to do some quite specific things. For those challenges, I suggest that you have a high power character first. So ideally, if you're in trade enabled league, maybe save up, maybe grind out 30 or 40 exalts first, do 500, 600, 700 maps, and then at that point, come back to this guide, because then you'll be looking at some of the things that you're going to be missing out on. Then you'll need to do a bunch of random stuff as well. You'll need to kill bosses in certain ways, and we'll get to all of that now. So firstly, the challenges covered in the first video are getting started with gems, expedition encounters 1, currency items, act bosses 1 and 2, level 90, achieve ascension, complete these quests, and unique monsters, followed by encounters 1, 2, and 3, vendor recipes, expedition encounters 2, and Danig's exchange. In the second video, we cover the challenges I consider to be intermediate difficulty: divination cards, defeat conquerors, expedition encounters 3 and 4, encounters 4 and 5, gamble with Gwenin, hangle with Tujin, broker deals with Rog, 8 mod maps, destroy expedition remnants, complete unique maps, and unearth expedition areas. Any of those that you're missing, there'll be tips in the earlier 2 videos to have a look at. Now for the ones that are new for this video. Expedition encounters 5. So this is the one that requires you to do all 15 different possible zones. You get credit for completing an expedition at the point that, I think it's at the point that the last explosive goes off. Now that's not going to happen unless you move towards them, and you will find that there's a number of monsters on the way. So basically you're going to need to kill most of the monsters in the zone after all of the detonation chains expire in order to get credit for this. Because you need to do 15 different zones, you're probably going to need to do about 25, maybe 28 or 30 logbooks, because you'll get a few of them that are wrong ones while you're chasing down the last couple. So you'll hit a point where you've done, say, 12 out of 15, you only need 3 different zones, and you're just going to find that you're struggling to get the last ones. So like I said, you probably need to get 25 or 30 logbooks in order to do this, unless if you're trading. There'll be a moderate amount of variance on this. Now, I've heard some unconfirmed reports that expedition encounters in maps that have delirium layers applied to them drop huge amounts of logbooks. I want to test this myself. I've only heard it secondhand, so I want to just test this before I actually say it's true. But you can at least consider that. Maybe if you're mapping in Lexajoris, you'll get the occasional map that drops with delirium layers applied to it. Just give the expedition encounters in those a real go. And see what you can do. Remember, only the runic monsters drop the books. Runic monster locations are marked by the skulls. You need to blow them up. That's the only way that you can get logbooks to drop. That's a mistake I was making early on. I thought, oh yeah, they've got to drop from the chest, don't they? Surely the chests are the important things. No, I was wrong. That's why I only got 2 logbooks by the time I'd hit about level 83. After that, I started changing how I was exploding the detonation chains, and I found I was getting logbooks all the time. Expedition bosses is basically something you'll get for free because you're going to need to do most of the conditionals. So this is the one to kill all 4 different expedition bosses. This would have been in the first 24, except that one of the bosses only spawns in the highest levels of logbooks. And so I feel like people that are going for 24 challenges probably won't get that boss. So, Encounter 6 is next. This is old league bosses. Mastermind 83 is the easiest to unlock. If you do a bunch of Jun missions at endgame, you'll get this one for free. At least one of your Jun missions needs to take place in a monster level 83, which means a tier 16 or higher zone. but chances are you're doing lots of tier 16 maps at endgame. This set of challenges is for people that are very, very, very established at endgame, and so you'll get this one for free. Simulacrum is a genuinely hard encounter. It's quite a lot harder than a tier 16 map, and it's also brutal beyond belief in hardcore. But it's very manageable in softcore trade enabled. You can trade for a Simulacrum for 108 chaos at the time I'm recording this video, and you can ask for help in trade channel 820 if you need it. And what you should do if you are needing help, like let's say that you get to wave 17, Kosis the Revelation has spawned, and you realize that you're just not getting him down, and you've lost 2 portals to him. You're not confident you can beat the encounter. At this point, what you do is you say in trade 820, hey, I need some help on Simulacrum. I'm on wave 17, Kosis is up, and I'm on the Singapore server. And just say, loot as it falls. And a lot of people will join you on that basis because they'll be like, oh yeah, cool, this is just free loot for me. If they've got a build that they're very confident can do Kosis, then they can just come in and take over your Simulacrum right near the end. They do most of the work, you still get credit, and you still get half the loot as well. That's a good deal for all players involved. The reason that this is in the 36 category though is because of the 5-way Legion domain. This is a heck of a grind to unlock even if you like Legion. You're going to need to get 200 splinters of each faction except for one, which you'll need 100 of. You're going to need to do a 4-way domain first, then a 5-way domain. If you're playing in solo self-found, you need to start prioritizing this now. You need to do every Legion encounter that you come across, and you also need to allocate Legion passives in Atlas regions that have them in order to prioritize getting this. If you're in trade enabled, what you need to do is just spend, I think it's about 140 chaos to buy a 5-way set, and it's about 75 chaos to buy a 4-way set. So buy a 4-way set, which is one of each emblem that doesn't, except for the Maraketh one. Then buy a 5-way set, run the 4-way set, kill all the bosses once, then run the 5-way set and you're fine. Alternately, if you're in Trade League, again, you can just join a Trade 820 group. There's a bunch of players that will grind 5-way domain and nothing else. They'll just keep doing that over and over again. And what they'll do is that they will subsidize the cost of these encounters by bringing in other players and getting those other players to pay more than 1/5 of the cost of the instance in order to get a share of the loot. This is actually a pretty lucrative arrangement for those players, but it can also be okay for you as the buyer as well. So that's organized a lot in Trade 820 and is well worth looking into. You also need to kill a Delve boss. This is RNG based, but is pretty reasonable. Uhtred the Blind and Kurgle the Black-Blooded are not rare once you hit about depth 150. They're not common either. I still haven't got either and I'm at depth 200, but they do show up a fair bit. All is very rare until about 450 depth and very hard to beat at that point, but you don't need to beat all for this. You just need to beat one of them. Encounter 7 is precision boss kills. Now with all the precision boss kills, and this will include the expedition bosses when we get to those later, culling strike support is your friend. Mine builds are also really good. The reason for this is that both of these builds can pretty much kill a boss like that when they need to. You should also do a lot of these on scoured maps. So when I say scoured map, I just mean a map that's had a scouring orb applied to it. That will remove all the mods from it. Mods make these a lot harder to do. They make it so that you can't tank as many of the boss's hits. They make it so that the boss is more likely to survive an otherwise killing blow. So for Toxic Swamp, this is a persistent AoE that's created when the boss teleports. It lasts a few seconds. You need to be inside it at the time that you launch the killing strike. So get the boss into cull range or into 1 barrage range for mines, wait for the boss to teleport, then get in the swamp, and then at that point, launch your culling strike attack. Detonate your chain of mines. Whatever it is, that's the way to do this encounter. For Mavail, remember that the Screech is only relevant in Phase 2. It does not exist in Phase 1. So just burst down Phase 1 as normal. When you get to Phase 2, the Screech is a really obvious thing. It's a point-blank range AoE centered on Mavail, so just when she starts doing the Screech, you can't miss it. Like, it'll hurt your ears when you're playing the game. When she starts using that, just getting close to her, get your stacks up to 4, then cull her. For Twin Burial Chambers, this is a hard fight, but it can be done on a magic map, so this means that you scour your burial chambers first, then you transmute it, and you apply alteration orbs until it's twinned. Just be very, very, very cautious. These bosses cast Corpse Explosion. It's specifically, they use the monster version of Vaal Detonate Dead. This will conjure an area where all corpses in it explode, and if you are within range of Alira's corpse, so boss Alira will have something like 7 million hit points. When she detonates, when one of the Aliras detonates the other, that's going to deal something like 420,000 fire damage to you if you are in range. Needless to say, players that are subjected to 420,000 fire damage go splat. You don't want to be you don't want to go splat, so you don't want to be anywhere near the corpse of the first Alira that's destroyed in this fight. You want to make sure that you are safe away from it, so that when Alira actually does detonate that corpse, it detonates peacefully and doesn't hurt anyone. The trio in Crystal Lore is straightforward enough. One of the 3 bosses uses Righteous Fire. You can kill them last, or alternately, you can use your own version of your own Righteous Fire skill gem, even if that's not a skill you would normally use. So even if you don't normally use Righteous Fire on your build, just kill 2 of the bosses, and then when you're working on the 3rd one, get them fairly low, then get to a safe spot, cast Righteous Fire, and then kill them off. That can work even if you're playing something that gets no benefit from it at all, like a medium range melee build, such as Tectonic Slam. You will still be able to do this. It just won't be all that comfortable, but you'll be fine. So next up is the conditional kill of Medved. Medved is one of the 4 new bosses. This is the boss that is linked to Gwenin, so it will come up in the Gwenin encounters. This is the easiest of the conditional bosses by far, and so should be on your path to 36. So for the poison one, you need to kill a boss when you are poisoned. The boss does inflict poison on you, so does some of the boss's adds, but you don't want to rely on that. You want to do the poisoning yourself. So that's the golden rule. And of course, I'm saying golden rule in brackets there because I'm pointing out that there is a unique jewel called golden rule that will assist you very much in poisoning yourself. What you want for this is a level 1 Stormbrand linked to level 1 chance to poison support and level 1 added chaos damage support with the golden rule unique jewel. Do this and you will have a massive amount of stacks of poison on yourself. However, these poisons will only tickle because it's a level 1 added chaos damage support, so it's not going to do any meaningful amount of damage to you. You'll easily be able to endure this, and then you can kill Medved just fine. For the Arachnid Familiars, you need to prolong the fight. Drag it out. Don't try and kill Medved, instead try and distract Medved with a decoy totem and you'll be fine. Now, the cultists that are related to the 3rd and 4th ones, the first thing to note is you can't do the 3rd and 4th conditionals in at the same time. The cultists spawn at 75, 50, and 25% boss hit points. What you want to do is use Southbound the unique gloves and skills that can't freeze to get all of the monsters down to 1 hit point simultaneously. So that is the cultist and the boss. Then, depending upon which conditional you're trying to do, either slay Medved first or slay the 3 cultists first, then immediately Medved afterwards. Just whichever of those is appropriate for your goals in this fight. The easiest way to split them up in order to do this, remember that Medved is one of the fastest moving bosses in the game, so if you place a decoy totem, Medved will move to the decoy totem much faster than the minions will. So that's a way you can do this. For conditional encounters, Varana. So Varana is linked to Tujin, and again, this is one you need to do on the way to 36. You don't need to. You'll need to do it on the way to 40 as well, but this is not one that you can easily skip. For the Black Reaping, you need to be outside the Eye of the Storm when dealing the killing blow. So the fight with Varana takes place inside it's very similar to the fight against Veritania, in that there is a storm that takes up most of the area, and it has an eye which is safe, and then outside in the storm you take damage over time. That damage over time area is called the Black Reaping, so you just need to be outside of that at the time that you deal the killing blow. One thing to note is that it is best to do the Black Reaping and the 25-star collapse together, and then to do no stars and the hard one of these challenges together as well. So, the star collapses. Let's talk about star collapses first and how the mechanic works. So, the way that this works is that in the area of the Black Reaping, there will be a whole bunch of stars orbiting around. When you touch one of these stars, it collapses. When you don't touch it, it fires projectiles into the middle of the arena. What you want to do, for the no star collapse, you just want to stay inside the arena all the time. And as long as you do this, you'll get credit for no star collapse. For 25-star collapse, you just want to run out into the outside area, into the area affected by the Black Reaping, and just tag as many of the stars as you can. You should find that this is really easy to do, the 25-star collapse, because the Black Reaping, like, it does some damage, it's not all that dangerous. The hard one, though, is having no player in the party hit by star collapse or star projectiles. So you're going to need to stay in the middle, and the best way to do this is just to burn Varana down super fast. You want the lowest tier logbook you can find that has Varana in it. You also want the Varana encounter to be as unjuiced as possible. So you want to go straight for her. You don't want to have remnants on her that make her tankier. You don't want to have map mods that make her tankier. You just want her to be as squishy as possible. And you want to blitz her down. You want her dead within 3 seconds of spawning. If you can do that, then you'll have no trouble completing the final challenge part. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of trouble. So you want to do this entire challenge in 2 runs. The Black Reaping and 25 collapse in the first, and then the other 2 in the other one. And if you get a couple of Varana logbooks, one of them that's got high tier and one that's lower tier, you want to do the harder challenges on the lower tier logbook. Next up is Conditional Uhtred. So this is only for 40 or 40 players, and this is the boss that is linked to Rog. So this is probably the hardest challenge of all of the ones in this league. And the reason for that is not to kill him when affected by Indifference of the Cosmos or Glimpse of Infinity. The one that's hard is to get hit by neither. It's the first sub-challenge. So, Indifference of the Cosmos is the easier one to dodge. It's the orbs. Basically, Uhtred will point at you and will release orbs. You just need to keep dodging. You want to either circle around him clockwise or counterclockwise without changing a direction. And as long as you do that, you'll be fine. This will be really easy. Glimpse of Infinity, though, this is the hard part. This is the light beams that he fires out. They get reflected by mirrors in the arena. This is really difficult to dodge, and you need to manage this encounter without being hit by this. This is just brutal, 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 brutal. And you need to basically, ideally, you need to find the lowest possible tier Uhtred encounter you can. The lowest that can spawn is monster level 75, so tier 8 map equivalent. And you want a mine-based character that massively outgears the fight. You know, you want the sort of mine-based character that can kill Cirrus in 3 seconds flat. Then what you want to do is come in here, drop a whole bunch of mines on the ground, start the Uhtred fight, press detonate mines, boom, Uhtred dead, and you've completed the encounter. That's the easiest way to do this, and really I think it's the only way to do this that doesn't require extraordinary bullet hell type skills. The final part with the Seeking Stars is something you'll also get for free when you basically blitz the fight in a couple of seconds via the mine solution. So that's the way I recommend doing Uhtred's Conditional, but this is a really hard encounter. Next up is Conditional Olroth. Now, Olroth is only available in tier 14 plus map zones, and this is a 40 of 40 challenges one only, and it is linked to Danik. So this is actually not as hard as Uhtred Conditional, despite Olroth being the harder boss. Can't be done in one run. So number 4 innovation is a simple one. You need Culling Strike, and you need to stand in the Void Zone and just cull him. Numbers 1 and 2 are counterposed. So one of these requires you to destroy one type of object, the Runic Gateways, and the other one requires you to destroy the crystals. So you just need to pick the same one every time, and just be aware of which one you've done each time. Number 3, though, is the tricky one. This absolutely requires a teleport move skill. You cannot do this if you are relying upon a skill for movement like Shield Dash that requires you to traverse the intervening ground. You must use something like Frost Blink or ideally Flame Dash. Flame Dash is just the best of the teleport move skills anyway. So this requires a lot of skills with dodging boss mechanics. The first thing that you need to dodge is the rune that has 120 degree cyclic symmetry. So that means that it looks the same when it's spun around. It's sort of like a triangle, but directional. So when you spin it 120 degrees, it looks the same. When you flip it, it looks different. So when you've got that rune going around the arena, it fires crap in. Being hit by any of its attacks fails this challenge. The cage is obvious. It's a fire circle, but you must teleport through it. Otherwise, you will fail the encounter. This is a combination of high DPS and precise movement that will really test your skills. It's very doable. It's a lot easier than the Conditional Uhtred encounter, but it is still very challenging. And next up we have Encounters 8, which is about old league bosses. Firstly, a grand heist is trivial. You just need to find a blueprint, and if the one you found wasn't low level, you need to level up your rogues enough to be able to do it. This should be really easy to do, and ultimately, this sort of doesn't belong in Encounters 8. This belongs much earlier. Heart of the Grove is a horrible RNG fest by comparison. You are probably not going to find this if you're in solo self-found. If you're in solo self-found, this is 40 or 40 only. 3 Exalts, though, in trade buys a Blossom now, and there's a lot of players who are offering services where one person will buy a Blossom for 3 Exalts, then they'll sell a portal to the Heart of the Grove encounter for an Exalt or so, and in doing so, like, they're making themselves quite a bit of currency, assuming that they don't fail Ashabi, assuming they're very confident with the Ashabi fight. But also, that's just the cheapest way for other players to get this challenge done. I do expect that the Sacred Blossoms will be 10, 15 Exalts by league end, as more and more players have more and more currency and start becoming desperate to get this challenge done. Chaola in its domain is not a hard fight for a 36 or 40 player. In softcore, you can just hashtag YOLO it. In hardcore, you're going to need to research the mechanics. I haven't done a guide for this, but there are a couple of them available on YouTube. The Pale Council is a pain to get to, but the fight is trivial. Given how long it takes to get to this fight, the fight should really be monster level 84. You will see every other endgame boss except Ashabi long before you see the Pale Council. And that's just because the Pale Council is just... it's so much effort to get to in a system that people aren't really bothering with at the moment. Next up, we have 10,000 map tiers, and this is a 40 of 40 only. Guess what? This is a huge grind. If you're a hardcore player, you're going to need to do this, though. So I'm saying that hardcore players should, that are doing 36 or 40, should do this one and skip the next one, Deadly Encounters, instead. Deadly Encounters comes next. This is the easiest Deadly Encounters ever. That doesn't mean it's easy. It'll still be the 36th easiest challenge for most players, so the 5th hardest. Cortex is very hard to do under about 750,000 boss DPS. And this is due to a soft enrage mechanic where there's a buildup of garbage on the ground. This map rarely shows up in Zana missions if you're desperate, but it will drop about 0.5% of the time when you complete a tier 14 plus map. Now, 0.5% is not a lot, but for a player that's doing 36 challenges, you will probably get 3 of these during the league. Uber Elder is similar to Cortex, but a little bit easier and a little bit less RNG to get access to. You're going to need to do the Shaper a couple of times. You're going to need to do the Elder fight a couple of times. Just make very certain that for Cortex and Uber Elder, turn off, and actually for everything on this list, turn off Maven Witness unless you know exactly what you're doing. Uber Atzeri is next, brutal in hardcore, but if you play hardcore, you already know that. This fight is pretty easy in softcore now, just because players tend to overgear it so much. You're going to lose 10% XP when you do it, but that's just, because you will make a mistake until you're experienced with the fight. But that's fine. You can just brute force it. One thing that's really important with Uber Atzeri is that she has 2% physical and elemental damage reflect. So you need to keep this in mind. There are a number of builds that just can't really do Uber Atzeri because of that effect, and need to make significant investment in reducing the effect of reflected damage on them just for that fight. Often you will take off a powerful endgame chess piece and replace it with, I think it's Shaper, maybe it's Elder, armor piece that has 100% reduced effect of reflected damage on you. Just be aware that 100% means that you're safe from reflected damage unless you're shocked, but if you're shocked, you will still take some damage because, if you're shocked for 18%, you'll take 18% reflected damage. That can still kill you. So keep that in mind. Maybe you need more than just one item reducing reflected damage. But Uber Atzeri, although she's mechanically quite challenging, her stats are just lower than the other hard bosses. So in softcore, at least, where mistakes are less punishing than in hardcore, you can definitely do this. The Maven is quite a technical fight. It's hard to outgear the fight, but it's only medium difficulty to execute. So this is probably easier than the Cortex, easier than Uber Elder, and comparable to Cirrus 8. Cirrus 8 is next. You can outgear the fight if you can tank the die beam, and then in that case, the fight is really trivial. But if you can't tank the die beam, you're just going to need a lot of practice with the fight. You'll get there eventually, I did say do 15 Cirrus cycles for purposes of this challenge, or for this set of challenges, so you'll definitely be able to get it down within 15 tries. Lastly, we have endgame grinds. So solo self-found players, good luck. One of the things with endgame grinds is that cooperating with other players makes them a lot more reasonable. So hitting level 100 is very grindy indeed. Most players should skip this. Solo self-found players have to do this though. They're going to skip simulacrums. And so that basically means if you're committed to doing 40 challenges in solo self-found, you are in for a long ride. Going for level 100, the best content to do, there's a few things that are really obvious, like pure breach stones and 5-way legion encounters that sort of everyone knows about. Everyone that's ever gotten close to level 100 knows that content exists and has at least considered doing it. But a few of the sort of cheesier things that are worth considering, you can do grand heists, are really good for XP. You can also do scoured maps and transmuted maps. This is really cheesy, really cheesy, but the amount of XP that you get from a transmuted map, which might have 13% pack size, is actually not all that much less than the XP you'd get from an elked map that might have 24% pack size, but the danger is much lower. Additionally, you can apply Jun missions. Jun missions give enormous XP when you complete them, and so if you save up a whole bunch of Jun missions, you can do them on transmuted or even scoured maps, transmuted maps with no scary mods, and you can then just get a tremendous amount of XP that way. Next up is 400 Eternal Labyrinth Dark Shrines. No one should do this. Really, no one at all should do this. This is just a horrible challenge. It's going to take quite a lot of time, and you're going to hate life the whole time you're doing it, because when you are on a character that's capable of doing 40 challenges, you are going to find the Eternal Labyrinth extraordinarily boring. So yeah, don't do this unless you're just doing it for the sakes of making like some meme video that no one is ever going to want to watch anyway, because it's going to be so horrible. Simulacrum is very doable, but very long. This is probably the fastest option of the lot, but it does require a powerful character to farm simulacrums. Ideally, you want to do this in a group where each player supplies 3 or 4 simulacrums. 4 will be enough for everyone to get it. 3 will be just a little bit short. And then you can just cooperate, do a simulacrum each together, then, you know, take a break, then come back and do another simulacrum each together, take another break, come back, and so on and so forth. Blighted Maps is next. Again, this is one to organize rotations with other players if you're in trade enabled, and you want to jump into the channel Trade 820 for this. If you're in solo self-found, this is going to be a lot worse. However, you can get yourself a lot more blighted maps by running a lot of blight encounters. I think it's in Lyra Arthane that has the various blight encounter mechanics that cause more blighted maps to drop. And you just want to go into that region of the Atlas. So it might be Lyra Arthane. I might be wrong on that. It might be Turns End or Lex Proxima. One of the regions though has something that enhances the number of blighted maps that drop. You want to run there, and you'll also want to run maps. You also want to run demolition heists that drop maps that have the blight enchant on them. So +1 blighted map. +1 blight encounter. That will mean that you'll get more blighted maps. This is far easier to do in a trade league though, and just remember that they need to be rare maps. Next up, you have the Omnitect. So this is the easiest one to do, but is also one that really requires cooperating with other players to be smooth. If you're doing this solo, you're going to need 240 Elva missions. That's not going to be fun. If you're doing it in group, all you really need to do is just sit in Trade 820 and just map as you normally would. Every now and again, someone will say, selling Omnitect Portal for endgame grinds. Usually they'll charge 10 chaos for it, maybe 15 if you're unlucky. So just give them 10 chaos and jump in, get a portal to their Omnitect, kill our Omnitect for them, portal out, and everyone's happy. 125 logbooks of area level 80 or higher is the second easiest of these, and it's something that, again, much easier in trade leagues. But even in solo self-found, you can do this, and this is just going to mean you will need to do a lot of the expedition encounters in high tier maps. As long as you do that, you'll get flooded with logbooks over time. They're just genuinely not rare. You get maybe 1 per 5 maps or so, And given that you're probably doing 15 to 30 Cirrus cycles, actually, if you're doing endgame grinds, you're doing 30 Cirrus cycles for sure. You'll get this done. You'll get this done easily enough. Okay, so that's basically it for the pathway to 36 and 40. If you got any comments or questions, definitely fire away below. Otherwise, may your Valorps have interesting results, and I will see you in game.